Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Friday, July 28th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. We've got a lot to get into today on the podcast. Mets made a big move last night, or I guess I should say a move that has a lot of impressions and a lot of people kind of scratching their head as to what the New York Mets are trying to do here at the trade deadline. We know what they're doing, but what in the world did they get in return? Was that all they could have got for David Robertson in the Marlins deal? We'll get into that to open up today's show. Last night was a wild one for the New York Mets because you have that trade, which happened after the game, and then you have the whole rain delay. I mean, it was downpouring at Citi Field in Queens last night. The Mets did come away with a 2-1 victory over the Nationals in a late eighth-inning rally to put up 2 runs in the eighth, get the job done, close it out in the ninth, and get a win after losing the second game of the Subway Series at Yankee Stadium on Wednesday to obviously Carlos Rodon and the New York Yankees. So it's been a wild 24 hours for the New York Mets. You expect it to maybe even get a little crazy here as the trade deadline continues to get closer and closer and closer. We've got a lot to get into today on the show. We're going to start off with the Mets trading away David Robertson. We're going to get into the deal. We're going to break it down, my thoughts, my opinion on the move, and we'll kind of break down what did the Mets exactly, what was their plan with this move? We know they're probably going to sell with the way they currently stand in the standings, but what exactly do the Mets feel this is going to do for them, bringing in 2 young prospects that aren't going to be ready for a good couple years down the road? So we're going to get into that. We're going to break down the trade. We'll also get into a little bit of football. Jets, Giants, will get you a training camp update. I was at New York Jets training camp yesterday. That's why there was no podcast, because I was at Jets training camp yesterday. I do have a ton of Jets podcasts up on Apple Podcasts, In the Trench with Gang Green, that recap yesterday's practice, talk about all the news. We'll get into the Sean Payton, Robert Saleh stuff. We'll get into Dalvin Cook visiting the Jets and his comments this morning on Good Morning Football. We'll talk about the Jets training camp, my impressions from yesterday, my in-person takeaways. We'll also get to the Giants. Darren Waller looks legit for the New York Football Giants through the first couple days of camp. So we'll get to that as well a little later on. But we got to start today with a little bit of baseball. We'll also get into the Yankees as they open up a 3-game series this weekend, or this weekend against the Orioles. And not even that, but this is a start of a 10-game stretch that it really could decide a lot for the New York Yankees this upcoming trade deadline and the rest of this season. And really the next month, their schedule's tough, but especially these next 10 games. 3 games starting tonight in Baltimore. Then you come home for a big 7-game stretch. Tampa Bay for 3, Houston after that for 4. What do we need to see from this Yankee team over these 10 games? Does Judge come back tonight? They DFA'd Willie Calhoun. We'll get to that as well later on. Get you ready for tonight's game. Yankees-Orioles will also get you ready for the second game of the 4-game set between the Mets and the Nationals. And that's where we'll start today, is the New York Mets. So the Mets got the job done last night, 2-1 against the Nationals. Nationals actually went into the game last night 5-1 in their last 6. They had a 6-game homestand. They took 5 of the 6 of those games. They got the job done during that homestand. They go into Citi Field last night, had a lead a good chunk of the way, 1-0 lead, blow it in the 8th. You had the whole rain delay, and then you have the David Robertson trade. So the Mets do come away with the victory. It's not a victory that you're happy about because you made a trade with David Robertson. It's also a victory that was 2-1 against a really bad team. And also you had the bad taste about the loss on Wednesday. Last night was just a wild night for the Mets. Because when you break it down, we'll look at it from this perspective first, then we'll really get into the deal. We'll take this as a couple. We'll look at this as a couple in a couple angles here. But last night, so you have 1-0 Nationals are winning, right? And then you get the Mets go up bottom of the 8th. They put up 2 runs, and you have the whole rain delay situation. David Robertson was warming up in the bullpen before the rain delay when the Mets were up, getting ready to go out there for the 9th to close it out against the Nationals and get the win. The rain happens, torrential downpour. I mean, it was pouring. I mean, I was watching the game because the Yankees had the night off, so I was watching the Mets-Nationals last night. and you're sitting there watching the game, and you first see them put on the tarp, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, there's no rain, it's forecast. You know fans are going to be fed up. If fans are going to be angry if there is no rain and you blow a rally, because at the time it was still tied 1-1. Mets end up coming back 2-1, all that stuff. David Robertson was warming up before the rain delay. Rain delay happens. Teams go into the clubhouse. Brooks Raley then comes out after the rain delay and warms up. And instead of David Robertson warming up, it was Brooks Raley. Now, David Robertson did say in his press conference last night after he got traded to the Miami Marlins that they went to him when he was in the locker room and said, something's in the works. We're looking at a trade right now. Number one, you're not going to go back out there for that reason. Number two, it's almost as if with the rain delay, he wasn't probably going to go back out there anyway. But it was just wild because right when that happened, the rumors started to swirl. Robertson's been on the trade block for the past couple weeks. We talked about it a little bit on the show a couple days ago. We've known, again, he signed a one-year deal. He's a veteran. Contending teams would look for a reliever like a David Robertson. Has put together a very good season for the New York Mets after signing the contract after Edwin Diaz went down with the injury in the World Baseball Classic. So with that being said, you knew something was going to happen. And sure enough, game ends. David Robertson gets traded to the Marlins. And the aftermath of this is just a whole lot of head-scratching questions from Mets fans as what the New York Mets exactly got in return. What Bailey Epler, what was he doing? Number one, this is an in-division trade, which is kind of surprising, but they found a team, they found a fit. They found a team that wanted Robertson. The Marlins also just made a trade with the Twins earlier this week, trading away some pieces to bring in Jorge Lopez. So they got two relievers now in the last couple days to help them with their playoff push as they try to fight for a wild card spot in the National League and try to get into the postseason for the first time in a very long time, really since they blew it up with the JT Realmuto, Giancarlo Stanton, Christian Yelich days. They haven't had success since then. They're finally having some success this year. Bullpen, rotation. Luis Ariz has been, just amazing with his chase for batting 400 on the year. All that. So you understand from a Marlins perspective. From a Mets perspective, though, it's very head-scratching. From a David Robertson perspective, however, and we'll get more into the Mets perspective here in a second, but from a David Robertson perspective, he gets to go to a team that's contending. He gets to go to a team that has a chance to make the playoffs, which the Mets don't, and the Mets started to sell last night. But this is now the third time in David Robertson's career that he has been traded at the deadline. 2017, he got traded from the Chicago White Sox back to the New York Yankees when the Yankees made that 2017 push and lost to the Astros in 7 games in the ALCS. He got traded last year from the Cubs to the Phillies. Was a big piece, was a big help to the Phillies, getting them to the World Series. Phillies desperately needed bullpen help. David Robertson helped a lot, filled up some of the holes. There was still a lot of holes in that bullpen, but David Robertson was definitely a big piece and a big reason why the Phillies were able to get to the World Series last year. Obviously didn't win, but they got there after a really rough start to the season. And now here we go again. David Robertson, a year later, 2023, he goes from the Mets to the Marlins in the division. So David Robertson has now played for the Phillies, the Mets, the Marlins. The only two teams he hasn't played for is the Braves and the Nationals. So he's played for 3 of the 5 NL East teams now with this current Marlins deal. And 3 of those 5 NL East teams have come within the last year. He spent a half a season with the Phillies last year. He spent a half a year this year with the Mets. And now the next half of this season is going to be with the Marlins. So it's been a wild year and a half, 2 years for David Robertson. This is now his third time being traded. 2017 from the White Sox to the Yankees, 2022 from the Cubs to the Phillies, and now 2023 to the Mets and to the Marlins. So that was just from the David Robertson perspective. A lot has gone on in his career recently, from being traded often from, team to team, back-to-back seasons now, has gotten traded at the deadline. And we kind of knew this for a while now that Robertson was probably going to get traded. It was just a matter of when. But the Mets, what they got in return was so questionable. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to go out there for David Robertson and go out there and get a guy you're going to get a top prospect for him. No. But could you currently get a reliever maybe now that's currently up, or a prospect that's almost going to be up? Sure, definitely. You could have got that for David Robertson. You could have got positions of need for David Robertson. You could have got a higher grade prospect for David Robertson, or at least you should have been able to. But instead, the New York Mets in return get Marco Vargas, shortstop, 18 years old, and a catcher in Ronald Hernandez, who is 19-year-old. Two guys that are in kind of the rookie league that the Mets got in return for their best reliever. Two rookie league teenagers, an 18-year-old shortstop in Marco Vargas, and a 19-year-old catcher in Ronald Hernandez. That's what the Mets got in return last night. And you talk about building up the farm system, this really doesn't do a ton, and this really doesn't help you for the future, because these two guys aren't going to be ready until 2027 and 2026. Marco Vargas' estimated time of arrival in the MLB is 2027. And Ronald Hernandez, the catcher, is in 2026. Now, sure, maybe down the road they could be utilized as trade bait. Maybe. But these guys have proven nothing. You have no clue what these guys are going to be. You traded away a really solid piece. And again, I'm not against the trade. It was smart to trade him. He was going to walk in free agency anyway. It was a one-year deal. Might as well get something for him. But getting this low of value for him, getting two guys that aren't going to be ready until 3 to 4 years down the road, getting a position in a catcher. And look, a lot can happen in 3-4 years. But Ronald Hernandez, I mean, what is he going to do with the Mets? Probably nothing. He's got two top prospects ahead of him. Francisco Alvarez is the future, and then your top prospect, Kevin Parada, is a catcher. His estimated time of arrival, 2025. And Alvarez is the future catcher. So what's the point in trading for a prospect catcher? And then shortstop, too. Well, that's occupied by Lindor. You've also got Ronnie Mauricio. You've got Jet Williams. You've got guys like that down the road could potentially fill in at the shortstop spot. Not Marco Vargas. How many times do we see prospects, their estimated time of arrival being 3-4 years down the road, turn into nothing? The Mets got slim to nothing in this deal. They basically traded away David Robertson and got back two guys that will have no clue what they can be until 3 to 4 years from now. That's basically what the Mets did. They got nothing that can benefit them now or even next season. You know, they at least could have traded Robertson and got maybe a prospect that could have went into spring training next year and at least competed for a spot, or a young, promising, hard-throwing reliever. You know, we talked about that. The Mets have no relievers in their bullpen that are hard-throwing, that can throw gas, that can provide a little bit of energy, provide a boost. They don't have that. The least they could have done was ask for a reliever, a guy in AA or single A or AAA that at least throws hard, that could provide something next year for you, that could provide something down the road. Not two guys that are 18 and 19 years old and you really have no clue what they're going to be. And don't give me, they've been scouting them. They like the future of them. They're 18 and 19 years old. These guys aren't going to be ready till 3-4 years down the road. You can't sit here and tell me, we know Marco Vargas is going to make an impact 4 years from now. It's going to be 2027. So that's what the Mets got for their best reliever. And that's another reason why, if I'm Steve Cohen, you get on the phone right now and you continue to search for a president of baseball operations, because you need somebody else making the baseball decisions and not Billy Epler. What the Mets have done at the trade deadline in 2 years, what Billy Epler has done at the trade deadline, and again, it's not over. There's still a lot more pieces that could be moved. Does Verlander get moved now? Who knows? But what the Mets have done, they traded away their top reliever, which, again, we knew that. And my problem isn't the fact that they traded him away. It's the fact that they traded away for so little. The other thing is, last year, when the Mets had a chance to legitimately make a run at a World Series and a championship, they did nothing at the deadline. Their biggest moves at the deadline last year were acquiring Darren Ruff, Joely Rodriguez, I believe it wasn't Joely Rodriguez. It was, I forget. It was the guy from the Cubs. Either way, Darren Ruff and Daniel Vogelbach were your two big offensive moves. That was what the Mets did last year at the deadline. That was the Mets' way of saying, we're going all in for a championship. Let's trade for these guys. That's what the Mets did. It wasn't Joely Rodriguez. My bad. I messed it up. It was the guy from the Cubs. I completely forget his name. But either way, that was it. Daniel Vogelbach, Darren Ruff. Those, you needed a big bat last year. They went out and signed those two guys. They needed a bullpen guy. They signed a guy from the Cubs or traded for a guy from the Cubs that was, he didn't provide anything for the Mets. He didn't provide any type of boost for the Mets roster, for the Mets bullpen. That's basically what it is. It was Michael Givens. That was the big move last year for the New York Mets. Michael Givens, who had a 4.79 ERA with the Mets, Darren Ruff, and Daniel Vogelbach. Those were the New York Mets' big shattering moves last year at the deadline. That was Billy Epler's way of saying, we're going all in on a championship. Darren Ruff no longer with the team. Givens no longer with the team. Daniel Vogelbach's getting ran out of town every night. He's getting ran out of town every night. Yeah, that's what Daniel Vogelbach is. The entire fan base wants him off the team. And now you trade away your reliever for nothing. So this, to me, is a fireable offense for Billy Epler. There's been many of those. This is another example of that if you're the Mets. It's just another one of these head-scratching moves. It really is just another one of these head-scratching moves. Again, trading him, fine. Because you might as well get something for him. But what they got, you could have got so much more. You could have got guys that could have been ready. You could have filled actual needs. These two guys, 4 years from now, who knows what the Mets are going to look like? These two guys, I can guarantee you, are probably not going to ever play a single game for the New York Mets. Probably will never will. Mets missed an opportunity. So that's the Mets' perspective from it. When you look at these two guys, it was the Marlins' 18th and 21st ranked prospects. And when you look at the Mets, is where they are in terms of their prospects now. So Marco Vargas is the Mets' 6th ranked prospect now, and Ronald Hernandez is the Mets' 17th ranked prospect now. So the 18 and 19-year-old, that's where they currently stand when it comes to the Mets and how they rank on the Mets prospect board. And again, Marco Vargas estimated time of arrival 2027, Ronald Hernandez 2026. David Robertson this year had 14 saves, a 2.05 ERA, 48 strikeouts, a whip of an even 1 in 40 appearances with the Mets, 44 innings, 13 walks, 3.7 was his walk-to-K ratio, 31 hits, 13 runs, 10 earned. Again, the 14 saves, 7 holds. David Robertson was everything the Mets could have asked for. He really was. And again, kind of just a recap on his career with the Mets, even though it was only 40 appearances. He was their best reliever. He did everything the Mets could have asked for. He went out there, he pitched to a 2.05 ERA, 14 saves, was a really good high leverage guy. It was a good signing. You had to trade him. It made sense to trade him. Mets are now officially selling. But, what they got for him was not good. But when Edwin Diaz went down, you needed a guy that can come in and be good, solid, veteran, reliable. David Robertson was exactly that. He's a veteran. He was reliable. He was very good. I think he was a lot better than a lot of Mets fans expected. He pitched to a 2.05 ERA, which, let's just say this 2.05 ERA stands. It'll be upwards near one of his best in his career in terms of his ERAs. He's had a couple really good seasons. He had a couple years with the Yankees where his ERA was low 2s, even into the 1s. His 1 year with the Yankees in 2011, he pitched to a 1.08 ERA. So he had a couple really dominant seasons. This year, he was really good. He was really reliable. He pitched to a 2.05 ERA. That, for a reliever at his age, is a bonus for the Mets. And the fact that they got what they got for him, is a direct reflection on Billy Epler and the job he's done with the Mets. He had a chance to go all in last year. You saw the moves he made. He has a chance to pick up pieces for the future, and this is what they get. Two guys that won't be ready until 3-4 years down the road. Two guys that there's a good chance they might be traded in another year or two. I mean, let's be honest here. And either way, if you want to look at it from the perspective of, oh, maybe next year they can utilize these two guys as trade pieces. There's no value. They have no value. I didn't even know these guys existed. You can barely find any information on them. They're not even pictured on the MLB prospects. Like their little picture is even there. That's how no name these guys are. It's just Mets are in a bad spot. So anyway, the official sale of the New York Mets began last night. Does Verlander up next? We heard rumors now that Verlander is definitely on the board. Do they move on from him? Does Scherzer, the whole no trade clause, does he waive his trade clause? Do you move on from a Marte? These next couple days are going to be really, really interesting. And when you look at it from a Marlins perspective, as we looked at it earlier, the Marlins are right in the heart of it. They're a half game out of the final wild card spot right now. They're 2-8 in their last 10. They've really struggled. They've acquired some bullpen help. They've never been this good in a very long time. They're 55-48. They're third in the National League East. They're right behind the Phillies. Them and the Phillies are fighting for it. They're 10.5 games back in the NL East, only a half game back of the Phillies, one back on the loss column, tied in the win column. So from Marlins' perspective, you definitely understand it. And when you look at the Mets, I mean, they are 48-54, and they're still 7 games back. They even being 6-4 in the last 10 and some of the wins that they've been able to pick up recently, like they just plateau. They haven't moved in the wild card race one bit. Like they haven't moved. They're still stuck at 7 games back because the teams in front of them are winning, and they're not doing enough winning. Like they need to get on an extended win streak. Winning 2 of 3 and then losing 2 of 3 and then winning 2 of 3 and then losing 2 of 3 is not going to do you anything. It's just going to playing 500 baseball for the Mets is not going to get them to the postseason. They need to do a lot more to get from where they are now. But they're selling. That's what they're doing. And looking ahead till next season. Although this is, I guess they're looking ahead to 2027 and 2026 with these moves. But either way, we move on. So go from baseball now to the New York side of things with football, which is very optimistic. A little bit of drama yesterday, but a lot of optimism around the New York Jets and the New York Giants. There's a lot to like from what we've seen so far through 2 days of Giants training camp and 7 days of Jets training camp. Obviously, the Jets started a week earlier than everybody else did. Giants will have camp today, 5 p.m. Eastern, so a later camp. Jets have a day off. They'll be back tomorrow for camp. I was actually in attendance for Jets training camp yesterday. It was awesome, a lot of fun. Always great going out to Florham Park. Excellent facility. Always a lot of fun. Training camp's the best time. One of my favorite times of the year. This is one of my favorite times of the year in general for football, because for sports in general, I should say, because with baseball, it's right in the heart of the season. You got the trade deadline coming around a corner, August 1st. Baseball season's been really rough, but there's still always excitement and deadline. Who you're going to buy. And not even excitement, it's just there's always a lot of conversations. There's a lot of things to talk about. Who's going to get traded? You talk about all the rumors, talk about some of the potential, Soto going here, this guy going here, like the potential, maybe this move does this team makes this move. So that's always fun. And you got football season. It's still the summertime, and there's so much optimism for every team in the NFL. No matter if you go into the year being projected as the worst team in the NFL or you go into the year with Super Bowl aspirations, it's always a lot of fun because there's always optimism. And you can always talk yourself into, hey, if this guy plays well, if this quarterback does this, if this coach does this, we're going to be good. You can always, I said it, all the years of the Jets being so bad and there not being any optimism going into the season, training camp was always a time where everybody was 0-0. And training camp's optimistic because you always get a lot of positives coming out of training camp in terms of the practices. You see some guys, play well. This year there's a legit optimism for the Jets, which is finally nice, but it's always fun because you always have the optimism. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody's got hope. Everybody believes they can do something special. That's what makes training camp so fun. And yesterday at Jets training camp, there was a lot of good things I saw. It was awesome just to see Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform. I mean, seeing that up close was wild. I still can't believe it. Again, it's still crazy to me that he's the Jets quarterback. And there's been times where I've kind of taken a step back and just thought about, like, wow, he's actually our quarterback. And it still doesn't seem real to me. I don't know when it will. I don't know if it'll seem real when he runs out of the tunnel week 1 in the uniform and the fan goes crazy and he officially lines up under center for the first snap. I don't know if it'll ever seem real. I mean, if he goes on and wins a Super Bowl this year, it might just seem like some big dream that we're all in as Jets fans. But it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to see him play. It was a lot of short practice. It was a lot of short throws yesterday from what I saw. But it was, it was short, quick. I mean, he's got such tight spirals. Like, watching him in person, watching him up close, because the seats were great. And the Jets have done a great job at their training facility, increasing, like, they put the big shade over the stands now. It was awesome. Like, they did a really nice job. It's an awesome facility. And seeing him up close, like, there was even one throw to Uzomah. It was only like a 5-6 yard gain, but he went through his reads. Nobody was there. And then all of a sudden, like, he saw Uzomah, took the check down route underneath, and he wasn't looking, and he put his arm slot from here to here. He sidearmed it, and it was a bullet to Uzomah. Like a perfect spiral. To be able to adjust that quickly to sidearm, not really looking, and make a throw like that is just, it's talent we haven't seen at the quarterback spot. So you saw that. There's a lot of other positive. Jason Brownlee, who I've talked a lot about on my podcast, my Jets podcast, has been very impressive. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday, one from Streveler, one from Aaron Rodgers. There was a lot of good takeaways, too, from the defense, so that the offense won the day yesterday, especially in the red zone. And that's something I think Rodgers, so far, one of the things that we've seen a lot of has been the red zone success, where they do a lot of the red zone drills. Like, Rodgers has been great in the red zone, and there's been a lot more red zone success, and the red zone play calling makes a lot more sense. And I think we're going to see something that the Jets forever now have done really bad was red zone. They've been terrible in the red zone for years. Really, since the playoff drought started, for the last decade, the Jets have never been a good team in the red zone. They get to the red zone, and they just don't capitalize, especially last year where I think we were one of the worst teams in the red zone. I always go back to that Vikings game where we were in the red zone, 6 times and we scored once? Or no, I don't even think we scored at all. I think we were in the red zone 6 times and we didn't score a touchdown once. Or it was something crazy. We had drops, bad play call, missed throws, sacks, penalties. It was so frustrating. Like, you're 10 yards away from the end zone. You have a fresh set of downs and you can't convert in 3 plays. You can't even gain 5 yards in 3 plays. It was so frustrating. Seeing, though, yesterday and continuing to see what Rodgers has done and the way the Jets have built this roster, I expect a lot more red zone success. And we saw that yesterday in camp. There was a lot of the Jets succeeded in the red zone. It wasn't many deep, flashy throws by Rodgers yesterday. It was just a lot of whoever was open, got the ball to him, got the ball to Conklin, got the ball to Uzomah, utilizing the tight ends, which the Jets haven't done in years. They're doing it now. Like, all the things that this team hasn't done forever is doing it this year because you've got a legitimate quarterback. It's crazy to me. One guy, quarterback, what we've been missing. You bring him in and you're already seeing the benefits. The red zone success, utilizing the tight ends. Just the receivers are benefiting. The defense is benefiting because you're actually going up against high-end quarterback play. So when you go up against the Mahomeses and the Josh Allens twice a season, you're ready to go up against that top quarterback play because the saying iron sharpens iron is kind of true to a certain extent. It's helping the defense too with Rodgers. And that's and another thing too is just mentoring the young guys. There was a play yesterday where Zach Wilson, I think it was Zach Wilson who was in. Rodgers wasn't even in. Like, they rotate quarterbacks. And I think there was a miscommunication, a player ran a wrong route. And Rodgers went up to him, not even being in those drills, but went up to I forget who it was. It might have been Gibson, it might have been Brownlee, it might have been Ruckert. It was one of the guys. I forget exactly who it was. It was one of the young players. Went up to him and told him, hey, this is what you did wrong, this is what you got to do better. Taught him. He's been teaching him up. Been teaching the young guys. He's committed. He took a pay cut. He took a $35 million pay cut to play for the New York Jets. He restructured his contract to a 2-year, $75 million contract. Zach Wilson's cap hit is more than Aaron Rodgers. Daniel Jones is making more money than Aaron Rodgers. It's crazy to me that Aaron Rodgers took that massive cap hit. He's motivated. He's ready to go. He wants to be a Jet. I think he's ticked off with the way the media and other fans have talked about him, thinking that he's washed, thinking that he's no good, thinking that it was going to be a disaster when he came here. But the reality is he's more motivated than ever. He's refreshed. He wants to be a Jet. And he understands how much talent there is on this team. And he's actually only benefiting the young players. Myself included, but a lot of other people thought the young players might hurt from Rodgers, but they're actually benefiting because he's a leader. He's turned into a good mentor. He's been great. Like, every aspect of Aaron Rodgers is spring/summer with the Jets, going back to OTAs and into the training camp. Everything has just been checked off, and they've all been great stuff from Rodgers. So that's what I saw yesterday. I broke it all down yesterday, too. Like, Bam Knight looked good. You know, Dalvin Cook's visiting today, which is good to see. I've talked about openly wanting Dalvin Cook here. I talked about it on this show. I talked about it on the Jets show that I do. There's, again, when you look at this 4 running back room, Izzy, Bam Knight, Breece Hall, and Michael Carter, you have 2 second-year players in Breece Hall and Bam Knight. You have a rookie in Izzy. Even Travis Dye, who's lower on the depth chart, probably a practice squad guy. He's a rookie. And then you have a third-year player in Michael Carter. That's the veteran in this room. The running backs room very young. To bring in a veteran like a Dalvin Cook helps just in the locker room, helps in the room to bring leadership, to bring veteran, to bring knowledge to a very young room, which is always a positive. And you're also bringing in a guy that has averaged over 100 yards per game in his NFL career. He's had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Is he the same running back he once was? No. But you can't take away the fact that he's ran for over 1,000 yards each of the last 4 seasons. He's towards the end of his prime. He's still a very good piece to have. He's a veteran. And again, Breece Hall might not be fully ready for week 1. Let's say Breece Hall's not ready for week 1. Dalvin Cook, you feel very, very good that he can go out there and be a solid piece to this room. You can rely on him. Like, Dalvin Cook would be very reliable. I would fully trust Dalvin Cook out there week 1 against Buffalo if Breece Hall's not ready. I would. And even if Breece Hall's ready, there's a good chance Breece Hall might be a little slow, not have the same burst the first 2 to 3 weeks because of the ACL. He's not going to have the same workload. They're not going to go out there and have him have 25, 30 carries week 1. So having Dalvin Cook benefits that. You have a reliable guy that can pass catch out of the backfield and that you know can be a big-time guy in the rushing game too, having 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. And you wonder who the odd man out would be in the room because you're not going to hold on to 5 running backs. The Jets the past couple years have held on to 4 running backs. So it's going to be Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, Michael Carter, Bam Knight, Izzy would be fighting for those final 2 spots. One guy would be the odd man out. I know a lot of people think that it might be Bam Knight or Michael Carter. Look, I don't know if they want to cut a rookie in Izzy because I could probably see a team picking him up. But I don't know. I think I feel like Bam Knight's put together a very good camp. And Izzy had a really rough start to camp where he had a lot of penalties. He's been better recently. His past 2 days were good. Yesterday he had a couple nice runs. From what I saw, Michael Carter, I thought, has put together a nice bounce back camp. I just can't see them cutting Michael Carter. If anything, I think they're going to trade Michael Carter. Because you might be able to get something for Michael Carter. You won't be able to get anything from Bam Knight. And you definitely won't be able to get anything for Izzy because he's a rookie that hasn't played a single game in the NFL. So you're going to have to probably cut those 2 guys. You might be able to get something, though, for a Michael Carter because he is entering his 3rd year. If there's an injury that happens to another team at running back that wants, a 2nd or 3rd back in their backfield, Michael Carter could do that. If Michael Carter gets where he was in his rookie year, you could get something for him. Like, teams could definitely see that. I mean, you got something for Denzel Mims. You can get something for Michael Carter. Michael Carter, in 2 years, has done more than Denzel Mims did in his, whatever it was, 3 years in the NFL. What was it, 3 years in the NFL, right? Because his rookie year was, with Gaze last year. Carter has done more in 2 years with the Jets. He did more in 1 year with the Jets his rookie season than Mims did in 3 years. So if you can get something for Mims, you'll be able to get something for Carter. So maybe that's the approach the Jets take. It'll be interesting. I like Carter. Again, I think Carter has excellent. I think Carter was dealing with a little bit of an injury last year. It might have been the knee. if that's the case, I wouldn't mind hanging on to him. I think probably your best bet in terms of holding on to guys would probably be Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, Michael Carter, Bam Knight. Because Bam Knight's put together a good camp. He's had a very under-the-radar, very good camp. Izzy, I don't know. I mean, he's been better recently, but he had a really rough start. A couple drops, a couple penalties. Again, he's a rookie, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a better chance of Izzy clearing waivers or Bam Knight clearing waivers. Because Izzy's a rookie. I could see a team, same thing, that's the Zach Kuntz argument too. Yeboah's put together a nice camp. If Yeboah puts together a better camp than Kuntz, do you cut Kuntz? But I could see a team with Kuntz's athleticism taking a chance on him and picking up. He probably doesn't clear waivers and get to the practice squad. So I don't know. But either way, you have that. You also had the whole Sean Payton, Robert Saleh stuff yesterday where Payton openly talked bad about Nathaniel Hackett and said how the Broncos' issues last year were Hackett and it was all about the head coach. And don't get me wrong, Hackett was not a good coach last year, but there's no need to throw him under the bus. There's no need to crush the guy. There's no need for that. We get he wasn't very good, but he's a very solid offensive coordinator. There are many examples in this league of coaches struggling at head coach, but being a very good offensive coordinator. Todd Bowles, I always bring up all the time. Not a great head coach, but a very good defensive coordinator. Trent has done a great job at the coordinator spot for defense, but not a good coach. There's plenty of examples. So for him to just go out there and act like Russell Wilson wasn't the problem and just take a random shot at the Jets and Nathaniel Hackett for no reason, number one, tells you he's scared of us. Because they're rent-free in his head because he's obviously thinking about the Jets if he feels the need to bring up Nathaniel Hackett. And number two, he obviously didn't watch any of the Broncos games last year. And if he did, he wasn't paying attention because there was plenty of times where Russell Wilson was missing open receivers. Is that a Hackett problem or is that a Russell Wilson problem? It sounds like a Russell Wilson problem. There's no need for that. And then he goes on to say about the Jets and their offseason and, the whole Hard Knocks, how they want it, how they want all the, how they want the spotlight, how they're cocky, how they're building a super. He talked about Hard Knocks and the Jets. The Jets didn't want Hard Knocks. They didn't want it. They openly said they didn't want it. The NFL chose the Jets. They forced the Jets into Hard Knocks because the Jets were one of the team that met the criteria for Hard Knocks. So saying Hard Knocks and the Jets and all that, they wanted it and all that stuff is completely false. Robert Saleh, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Douglas, they all openly came out and said they don't want Hard Knocks. Everybody's saying, oh, the Jets this, Jets that. Oh, now look, they're on Hard Knocks. That's the NFL's decision. They put the Jets on Hard Knocks. And if you actually understand what you're talking about, Sean Payton and the other fans out there, the Jets are limiting Hard Knocks' access to where they can't show players being cut. They're only going to show certain stuff because they're allowed to limit it. They don't want it. So that's another stupid, dumb take. And it just, as Saleh said, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. It's the truth. If you have haters, if people don't like you, whether on an individual level or in this case a team level, it means you're doing something right. It means you're good. Because people haven't hated on the Jets in years. Because nobody's cared about the Jets. Because they've been the laughing stock of the league. Now they bring in Aaron Rodgers, and now here comes all the hate. When you look at this last offseason, people act like the Jets they've built this super team. They're a super unlikable football team now. When you look at the Jets offseason, you want to know what they did? They filled the need. They went out and got Aaron Rodgers. They went out and got a quarterback, which they haven't had for decades. That's what the New York Jets did. They went out and got a quarterback because they missed on the last two quarterbacks that they drafted in Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson. That's what the Jets did. They didn't build some crazy super team. They went out, got the best player available in Aaron Rodgers, and made the move and improved their roster. That's what they did. It's ridiculous. And then you get all the people, too, that say, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers washed. Well, if the Jets went out and got Derek Carr, people would have been talking about the Jets missing out on Aaron Rodgers and falling for option B. They go out and get Rodgers, and now you got people saying Rodgers is washed. It's a lose-lose. It means they're doing something right. And I actually like the hate. I do, because I think it's great. Because when the Jets go out there this season, week 5 against Denver, they're going to have that in the back of their mind. They're going to play extra hard. Russell Wilson's not any good anymore. We saw that last year. And we also saw it towards the end of his Seattle career. You've had Russell Wilson's teammates openly come out and say that, openly saying that he has to apologize to people, that he's not a great locker room guy. He had to have his own office last year upstairs away from the team. He's a me guy. Doesn't care about the team. So when the Jets go into Denver week 5 and crush the Broncos, I want to hear what Sean Payton has to say then. And it's only going to add a chip to the Jets' shoulder. The more hate that comes the Jets' way, the more it adds to their motivation to go out there and put together a good season. The more it adds to Aaron Rodgers wanting to have a good year. Dalvin Cook, we need another running back. We could utilize another running back. That's not building a super team. It's adding more talent. So it's just some of these people, like Sean Payton, what a loser. Tell me this. What is Sean Payton without Drew Brees? And throw Bill Belichick in that conversation too. What is Bill Belichick without Tom Brady? Nothing. What is Sean Payton without Drew Brees? Nothing. 2 below-average head coaches without legitimate quarterbacks. And we'll get a good look at that this year. Because Sean Payton's going to get a good look at why Russell Wilson isn't any good and why that contract and that trade is going to go down as one of the worst and is going to hurt the Broncos for years because of the amount of money that they gave him. And also, one more thing. Sean Payton said, Sean Payton's got the Jets living in his head. He's so worried about the Jets. Robert Saleh's getting this team ready for week 1. Robert Saleh said, we'll see him week 4. They don't even play him week 4. They play him week 5. It just shows you that the Jets, everybody's focused on the Jets, and the Jets are getting ready for Buffalo week 1. It's just funny. It's funny how the NFL is attacking the Jets. It's great. I actually like it. Because, again, it means you're doing something right when everybody's hating. You just do. People hate on Patrick Mahomes. People hate on Joe Burrow. You want to know why? Because they're really good. I will admit, I didn't like Tom Brady. You want to know why? Because he crushed the Jets for years. He was really good. I didn't like him. People don't like you when you're really good. You're going to have haters. You're doing something right. It's the truth. It is. The Rams were getting a ton of hate the year that they won. You want to know why? Because they built a super team, won a championship. They were really good. It's funny. Like Aaron Rodgers got hate. You want to know why? Because he was making the playoffs every year. He won a Super Bowl. That's why he was getting hate. Still is getting hate now. You want to know why? Because they're rejuvenated. He's motivated. He's ready to go. Everybody counted him out. And he's probably got the best attitude he's had in a very long time. So, it's funny how all of a sudden the NFL world feels the need to just poop on the Jets. But it is what it is. Hopefully bringing Dalvin Cook. His visits today. So that hopefully goes well for the Jets, and we'll obviously see how it all plays out. Also, so you go to the other side, kind of the same side of town, New York, with the Giants, and that is Darren Waller. Darren Waller's been great for the Giants as they begin training camp. Today will be day number 3 of training camp for them. Yesterday and Wednesday were day number 1 and 2, all open to the fans. So it's been cool to see both New York football teams now officially back at it. We'll obviously have a lot more content coming your way, both Jets and Giants. But the Giants, their big offseason acquisition was Darren Waller, and he's looked really, really good. He's been probably one of the most impressive players in camp so far for the Giants. He's been one of the guys, too, that just across the league has gotten a lot of notice over the first 2 days, especially in the red zone stuff. He's been very open across the middle. When Darren Waller is healthy, he is one of the best tight ends in football. I ranked my tight ends a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, and my top 5 was Pat Freiermuth, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. That was my 5. And Darren Waller came in at number 4. The biggest issue with Darren Waller that we've talked about is the injuries. That's the biggest thing. But when he's healthy, he's one of the best tight ends in football. And, again, we've talked a lot about guys benefiting each other. Well, Darren Waller is going to benefit this offense in many different avenues. It's going to take a lot of attention off of other receivers, which is going to give them opportunities to get open more and get more looks from Daniel Jones, and it's going to benefit Daniel Jones because he's going to have a legitimate tight end to throw to. Daniel Bellinger wasn't bad last year. They utilized the tight ends a good amount last year. It's also going to benefit Daniel Bellinger because Daniel Bellinger in the 2 tight end sets that they sometimes run gives him an opportunity for Daniel Bellinger to also get open and get better looks. So Waller's looked really good. Having a big tight end like that across the middle, it's only 2 days of camp, and again, 2 days or 20 days of training camp. There's always, you never want to overreact because at the end of the day, you got to see it live in a game, and we know that. We've talked about that a lot on this show, but there's a good chance that you could get 2019, 2020 Darren Waller, where he went out there and put up 1,000+ yards this season for the Giants because he's the biggest guy. He's the biggest piece to this receiving core of an offense, and he was the biggest acquisition. And if he stays healthy, he's more than capable of getting back up to that 1,000-yard receiver that he was in 2019 and 2020, where he put up 1,145 yards in 2020 and 490 catches. And then in 2019, that was his 2019 numbers. And then in 2020, 107 catches for 1,196 yards and 9 touchdowns. That was by far the best year of his career. He can get back to that if he's healthy this year and with good quarterback play, which has been last year with the whole the whole Derek Carr, Josh McDaniels, poor coaching. You give him good coaching, good quarterback, health, Darren Waller can get back to that player. And tight ends, too, crucial. He was one of the best reception tight ends in football. He was great for PPR leagues. He gets back to that, pivotal for the New York Giants. You can see that Daniel Jones to Darren Waller connection already growing. I mean, like, yesterday practice, you're following it. I mean, he was literally throwing to Darren Waller every single play. The only time Daniel Jones didn't throw to Darren Waller was when he was off the field. It's crazy. That's how much he was throwing it to him. You have Saquon back. The Giants in a good spot. They've got some competition, obviously, in the secondary. Darnell Holmes, Cordell Flott. How do those positions all play out? You've got a lot of slot competition with, Beasley and Crowder and guys like that in the receiving core. So there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of roster spots definitely up for grabs. But one guy that solidified his spot and looks really good is Darren Waller at the tight end spot for the New York Giants. So we now move on here and get you ready for the baseball on tonight. We'll start with the Yankees and the Orioles. Yankees 54-48, Orioles 62-40. Garrett Cole versus Grayson Rodriguez on the mound tonight. Cole comes into tonight's game 9-2 with a 2.78 ERA. Rodriguez comes into tonight's game 2-2 with a 6.91 ERA. So you like the chances there for the New York Yankees, especially if Judge gets activated off the IL. And as for the Mets, you got Max Scherzer versus Mackenzie Gore. Gore comes into this game 6-7 with a 4.37 ERA. Scherzer comes into tonight's game 8-4 with a 4.20 ERA. So the Mets look for the second win of a 4-game set against the Nationals. Yankees look to get things started off on a high note as they begin a 3-game road trip in Baltimore and the first of 10 big games against 3 AL teams that are all in the playoffs right now and fighting for playoff spots as well. Orioles are in, but the Rays are trying to get back on track, and you get the Astros after that. 3 against Baltimore, 3 against the Rays, 4 against Houston. The 3 against the Rays and the 4 against Houston will be home. This is the only road trip squeezed in between those two. So, a lot happening coming up for the Yankees. Hopefully, Judge back tonight. These next couple days are going to be big to dictate. Not only do they have 10 big games right in the middle of that, August 1st, which I believe is Tuesday, which will be the second game of the 3-game set against the Rays, will be the deadline. So, a lot coming up for the New York Yankees. All right, that'll do it for the podcast here today. Wrapping up another big week of shows. I will obviously be back next week. Come back on Monday, talking all things New York sports, recapping the weekend, any trades that go down with the Yankees and the Mets or MLB in general. We'll also get to more Jets and Giants and any of the other big stories in the sports world. We'll get to that there next week. Enjoy your weekend. Stay tuned. I'll have more Jets content coming your way on In the Trench with Gang Green. Obviously, I've got my player previews that I've been doing for the Jets every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This week, we had 3 episodes up. We had first episode was Tyler Conklin and Jordan Whitehead. Wednesday's episode was Michael Carter and Quincy Williams. And today's episode, which is already up, been up for a couple hours now, was Corey Davis and Carl Lawson. So 3 more of those next week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, taking you up until week 1 against Buffalo. 3 of those episodes every week, plus the training camp recaps and any other news. If Dalvin Cook signs, I'll have a video on that as well. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way on the other channels. Yankees channel as well. Bubbs Talking Bronx Bombers had an episode up on that today. We'll probably recap the Orioles series, get you ready for the deadline in there. So a lot more things coming your way. As for this show, we'll see you all back here on Monday. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.